I can, sir. How are you?
Man, I can't complain. How about yourself, man?
I'm doing well, doing well.
It's like we did. It looks like the last time we spoke was how long ago? About 5 minutes.
I know.
Yeah, about 5 minutes ago. So, this is Saturday and it's July, and so people will likely trail in. So don't be dissuaded by the amount of people here. But look, there's one guy here, is LaRon, and he's been here
LeBron,
before.
yes.
And so LaRon's been one of our faithful listeners and faithful folks that have come. LaRon, how are you, sir?
Hey everyone, I'm doing good. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
And then, of
Everything
course,
here is going great.
say that again, sir.
I said everything here is going great.
Good. Where are you?
So far, no hurricanes, so thank God for that.
And where are you?
I'm in the Bahamas.
Oh, my family's from the Bahamas.
I'm so
Oh,
jealous.
that's awesome, man. What part? Was it a Nassau?
Yeah, my grandfather, right, Lane. His last name is Lane. He was born and raised in Cat Island.
Oh, okay. I've been to Cat Island plenty of times.
Yeah, so
Very beautiful.
if there's any Langs over there, you may be related to any of the Langs. We might be like 12th cousins.
Possible. It's possible.
Yeah, man.
Kind of feel
Yeah.
like everybody from the islands is related. I mean,
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right.
When they took us from Dio, when they snatched us from Dio, and of course, this is Dio that's online is there. Well, hey, Dio, how you doing, sir?
I'm okay. I
Good,
don't know
good,
about
good.
you.
I see you at university now. Great.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect, perfect. So when they snatched us from Dio and they took us to the islands, my family's from Montserrat and from Barbados, Barbados. I mean, excuse me, Trinidad, Barbados, same thing, right? And then so we're all like related to some degree, one way or another. So it's perfect. It's perfect. So anyway, hey, listen, I know that people will eventually start trailing in, but I don't want to fall behind in time. Louis, we're going to probably do about 45 minutes to an hour conversation because we've got quite a few questions that we'll be going through, and as people trail in, I'm sure Dio and even LaRon are going to have some questions themselves, and so I want to get through our question and answer period, our conversation, and give others some time to also jump in and have questions of their own. But I can say this much: you and I have enjoyed a pretty great relationship since we met a couple of years ago, just by coincidence at a conference, right? And so that has been a good engagement since the time we did meet. But let me go through a couple of housekeeping things here. This is Cyversity Engage. This is the Impact Interview Series. And when we say Impact Interview Series, what we do here is we have a series of interviews from practitioners in the industry whose work impacts the industry, impacts the people that they serve, their employees that they serve, or their subordinates or direct reports that they serve. And so you really want to have a conversation about how that person is impacting the industry, the security, cybersecurity, information technology, cloud architecture, that industry. And having that opportunity to talk about how they're impacting it, it bears questions, and it gives instruction, and it gives mentoring and tutoring and engagement to the folks that we serve, our mentees, our employers, or our business partners and the like. And so I wanted to be able to go through that process with you. And so you guys should know that today, look at my screen is just killing me today. Today we're going to be talking to Dr. Louis Pate. He is a SOC, superior SOC, a superior SOC director, chief information. He's the chief information. He runs the information security of the SOC, or he did run the information security of the SOC. He's got expertise in the SOC and over years of expertise in training and development. And so we're going to go through quite a few questions, but right now, just talking about the folks that are hosting this program, it's Cyversity, and every month I go through our mission, which you can see there, it's to achieve the consistent representation of women and underrepresented minorities in the cybersecurity industry. And Cyversity does that through their programs, and their programs are designed to foster recruitment, inclusion, retention, equity, job longevity, training and education, so that you know what it is that you're doing in this industry, because it is not as simple as we all thought it is and would be. But so we're looking at the fact that we're just growing, and we're teaching, and we're growing our numbers, if you will, in the cybersecurity industry between people of Black and brown and in yellow complexions. This is a membership organization, all right? And so if you're not a member, you can scan that code and it'll lead you to process to become a member. But as a member, we started our program, our membership program, or our dues paying program in 2022. Most of our students, most of our folks that are here, students invest in themselves about $20 a year to be a member. And of course, with membership comes lots of other things. I'll talk about that in a second. And professionals like Dr. Pate invest $100 a year, and there are obviously some support mechanisms for them there as well. Like any organization, Cyversity, like any other membership organization, Cyversity has a lot of benefits that they offer. Now, the benefits are highlighted or captioned here in 4 distinct titles. However, there's a deeper dive under each one of them. Even when you're talking about career exploration, at this point, Cyversity has so many partners, the ability to explore your particular career through education and through corporate engagement has become invaluable. And so we've been able to grow our organization to the extent that we've got tons of partners like CyberSeek, like Competency Core, and others that give us help us train and educate all of our members. We can also help you through assessing your skills, because as you develop develop yourself to become a cybersecurity practitioner, become a technical expertise, there's certain levels of assessment that you want to go through before you would step into something that you may or may not be prepared for. But this is always a good opportunity and a good way to assess yourself, to know what you're capable of, know what you're not capable of. And it's always better to know what you know, because sometimes what you don't know can be detrimental to you in your career. We've also worked to develop educational pathways through Cyversity Engage events, through scholarships, through training and mentorship programs. And of course, there's more to it than that, but that's how we help our members develop. And of course, we're always connecting with each other. We've got an incredible village. Cyversity has an incredible village, even on Slack and other, oh, there's another one, but I'm not going to mention it right now because I can't remember the name. But however, the point being is that there's a ton of connecting opportunities for us, of course. And of course, there are local chapters. I'm part of the Texas chapter and vice president of the Texas chapter, and a president of the Austin chapter. So we've got about 9 chapters so far, and we're continually growing. So there's much to learn here and much to develop. We've got quite a few topic areas. You can see them listed here. The things that we focus on here is leadership, transitioning, career development, a lot of technical talks. Well, you see that I didn't highlight this much a highlight, but it is June, which is LGBTQ and Pride Month. And so there's a lot of connections and symbiotic relationships between the African American Latino journey in this country and in technology that our partners, our colleagues in the Pride movement are also experiencing as well. As you can see, as you go down the list, September is Hispanic and Latino Heritage Month. June, July, damn, I missed July in there, so I have to put that in there, right? October is cybersecurity awareness, and on it goes. You can see from that. Just some ground rules. Mute yourself to avoid background noise. It's going to be about a 45-minute to an hour conversation where we discuss leadership, diversity, and inclusion. There will be a question and answer period at the end of the conversation, And even in the middle of the conversation, if you have a question as we go through our conversation, just go ahead and ask your question. This is a very interactive, live, engaging sort of conversation. So just step in there. You guys already know that this is being recorded because it is they cued you at the beginning of the process. And we also have a research or a survey link that I will be putting into the chat at the end of the conversation, so that you get a chance to give us your feedback and let us know whether this made sense, it was good, it was relevant, or whether we're just blowing a Saturday apart, right? All right, so let me get back to, first let me stop sharing, but you can see on the screen who we're going to be speaking with today. It's Dr. Lewis Pate. When it comes to SOC engagement and beyond, I know today we're just focusing on the SOC, but there's so much more that Lewis has to offer conversationally for us. But this is one of the great opportunities to speak to someone who's got some great. Hey, Lewis, did we lose you? Are you want to come on screen there? There you go.
I'm here, sir.
Hey, he's got a jacket on too. I feel bad. I didn't get the jacket memo.
I can take mine off.
That's all right, man. How you doing, Lewis?
I'm doing well. Thanks for the opportunity. And thanks for you folks that everybody that took time out of their Saturday to come and be a part of this little chat. I really appreciate it. And I know David works hard to pull these together. So thank you for your participation.
Yeah, sometimes it's tough. We may be moving away from Saturday to like a Thursday afternoon at 12 o'clock. I think that maybe it's Saturday and it's July, right? And so people may be on vacation and some people may be coming and not. Hey, there's Dr.
There's Doc. How are you, Doc? Always good to see you.
Right. So listen,
good to see you too, sir.
You've got quite the career there, Dr. Pate. Lewis, you got quite the career. You've served our country. I always say to folks that have served the country, I know the common theme is thank you for your service. I also add to that, thank you for your sacrifice, because quite frankly, many of you folks and gals, guys and gals who went to the service sacrificed a lot of your time, your emotional engagement. Some of you even sacrificed life and limb, which is an incredible sacrifice in and of itself. But I always say thank you for sacrificing for this country. I personally think everybody should do some service to the country, period. I don't care if you do Peace Corps, I don't care if you sweep streets, everybody should do some service to the country, but I want to thank you for yours. But you have served in the military, some 10 years in the Air Force. There's another Air Force veteran here with you as well. And so you guys will talk about that offline, but also you've worked with MITRE, and then you also work with a corporation, a federal contractor called CACI that does a lot to sort of protect the national grid, if you will, or the national technological grid. And so one of those areas that you sort of really focused on for at least the last 7 years or something, you managed their SOC. But not only did you manage your SOC, but Lewis, you moved on, and this is sort of the natural progression of this SOC engagement, the SOC life. And so I wanted to start, our questioning was that, what is it? What's a SOC? What is a security operations center? I've seen them, I've been in them, but let's hear your sort of opinion on what that is.
Okay, yeah, SOC then really kind of is the nerve center, right? When you're thinking about an organization and the organization's security interests, right? Whatever it is that they think is important in terms of intellectual capital and in terms of what helps them increase or maintain or increase market share, become more relevant in a particular space, right? Trade secrets, those kinds of things, right? You want to keep those assets secure. So the central hub where all those things, right, that organization cares about kind of links into, you call that a security operations center. And the biggest reason for that security operations center is that you want to be able to respond to the various threats that come against your organization. Typically, you have a dedicated team of folks that are very well trained, uniquely trained, specifically trained on how to protect those networks and the network that and the information that is traveling over those networks, which is typically the crown jewels of the organizations. So one way to think of it then is that the Security Operations Center is really the watchdog organization. And its primary purpose is to oversee the digital assets, but it does oversee some of the physical assets as well, because there's some interplay there. But the main focus is to oversee the digital assets that the organization has. And one of the definitions we like to use for asset is anything that has value. So that means people have value, right? Secrets have value. Any ideas, right? Formulas, products, all those things, if they have value to the company, they call those assets. And if there's some sort of correlation there to the digital realm, then that's typically where your SOCs come in. And then why? Why? Because you want to be able to respond, right, when things don't look right. When there's suspicious or malicious kind of activity, or there's some type of unauthorized access attempts coming in, there's some type of malware infections, there is some kind of insider threat, right? An insider threat can be both intentional and unintentional. Sometimes you've got folks that just have a beef against the company because they didn't get a promotion that they thought they should have, or they didn't get the right raise that they thought of, or for any number of reasons. And then they may do things because they have a relationship with the company where they have elevated access to information. So they may try to quote unquote sabotage or destroy. And then there's unintentional where someone does something that they really don't mean to do. They trip over a cord and remove power from some critical servers, causing issues. So your Security Operations Center is looking at all that, is looking to protect your applications, all your security systems, your networking devices. How do you talk to the world? How do you communicate out? Data breaches, right? So from a regulatory perspective, making sure that you stay within the law, because those things have an impact on the bottom line of the company. If you fall outside of the law and get penalties, right? The worst thing that could happen, if you take it to the extent, is that the company can actually be shut down. So that's a very bad thing. So another one of the key elements of the Security Operations Center is to reduce risk by identifying those things before they happen and trying to mitigate them. And then once it's found, what do? Now you need to respond. You need to take some type of appropriate or maybe immediate action, depending on what that threat is, what the severity is. So the Security Operations Center categorizes those particular threats. And you have things and at least in a mature Security Operations Center, you have playbooks that some of this is already thought of, like you got your game plan, right? In the sports, you know that you want to run this play when you have this much time, or this is, after a timeout, those kinds of things. So you've got your playbooks, but then you've also got the ones where you rely on the experience of your personnel because the threat is evolving. So your Security Operations Center then has to have people that can understand the environment and respond appropriately, implementing those countermeasures. You've gotten attacked, you've been attacked. How do you respond? So in a nutshell, I know I said a lot, but in a nutshell, primary goal of SOC, maintain a security presence and posture that's very, very strong for the purpose of protecting the organization's assets, sensitive data, intellectual property, customer information, vendor relationships, infrastructure, and doing that in a proactive manner, and then doing that in a manner that's comprehensive and continuous.
Continuous.
And
Man,
continuous.
Louis, and I don't know if I've heard an explanation of a SOC or a description of a SOC quite like that before. Like I said, I've been in a couple, but most of the time I always hear something that's negative about how tough the work is, or how long the work is, or how, all of the challenges that come with being a SOC analyst, the hours, the amount of hours, the types of things that you're dealing with, the repetitive nature of being in the SOC, of constantly just logging millions and millions of logs constantly. And I mean, I just wanted to take a step back How did you sort of, you're Dr. Lewis now. You weren't always Dr. Lewis. How did you get here? What's the path?
The grace of God. That's that's really the answer. I wasn't smart enough to see the end, from the beginning, right? Absolutely not. So I can't take credit for that. But there were a lot of folks along the way that helped, a lot of mentors that helped guide and direct me. But one of the catalysts, the biggest catalyst was that I needed to get out of my environment, right? I was born in the inner city, in the hood, we call it, the ghetto, all those things. Again, my family's from the Bahamas, but my grandfather moved to Miami, and that's where I grew up in that kind of area. But we were poor. And as I grew up, I realized that I didn't want what I saw around me, at least my immediate. I wanted something better, but my parents couldn't afford, send me to college and things like that. So started seeing those commercials on television about the Air Force, aim high. We'll train you, we'll teach you, we'll give you some travel. And I said, oh, that sounds like a pretty good deal. So I ended up doing that. I joined the Air Force. By the way, slight update. I actually retired from the Air Force. I did almost 30 years in the Air Force. So that was 10 that's on my bio was just, talking about the relevant experience. But yeah, I actually did a full career and went all across the board. But back in those days, right, and Doc smiling, back in those days, computers were in the infancy stage. I know it doesn't seem that long ago, but really, this was before PCs. There were no personal computers. There were no cell phones, right? Hard to believe, but it was. And the military gave me an opportunity to kind of jump in there. And I said, that's computer stuff. Because I was always really kind of good in math and science. And I had a desire, for that kind of stuff. So that was one of the things that kind of attracted me to the digital kind of career field. Actually, it was mostly analog back then with just a tiny little bit of digital. So the military was really, really instrumental in helping me to get to where I am. It gave me opportunities to grow and to be in different parts of IT, or what was called telecommunications in those days, right? From telephones, I was a pole jock, kind of guy. First came in, it was analog phones, those old rotary phones, that kind of thing. Then they gave me an opportunity to work what's called outside plant. So I was digging trenches and putting conduit in to run copper cables to connect up systems back then before fiber became affordable. And then as fiber became affordable, more technologies came out and this new thing beyond telecommunications now, they called it, convergence. Now you can have voice and data on the same two pieces of fiber or copper, where you had to have it separate back in the day. So that was a big breakthrough, right? And I happened to be in the right place at the right time. So I was able to do that, and then satellite communications. And along the way in the military, I was gaining rank, and from enlisted side, I had gone to school. Then I became a commissioned officer, so I had more responsibility that way. Became an engineering lead along the way, and program management, those kinds of things. So in short, it was the military that helped me with these different phases to grow up from pre-computers all the way to now, where we're talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning. But I realized, and I would share that with everyone, self-inspection, you want to continue to do that, because at a certain point in my career, I realized that I needed to pivot. I had learned outside plant, I had learned analog, I learned a little bit of digital, but this new thing, this SOC stuff where you were dealing with application layers and you were dealing with packet inspection and you were dealing with cybersecurity. Man, what is that? Didn't have any understanding or very limited understanding of that. So I sought it out, and I was willing to get outside my comfort zone. A lot of times that's what we have to do. So I started asking and seeking for opportunities to do that, still within the military. But in the end, I knew it would be painful, but I felt at the end of the day, I'd be a better communications officer. So that's how I kind of got into this field. And then once I learned the different parts of the computer, out other than what left the computer going out, but what was actually happening on the inside, that positioned me then to be, effective in the SOC. So my advice would be, continue to stretch, continue to seek. If you have an interest in this field, it's so unlimited. There's so many things you can do. And at the end of the day, many of them connect. So I thank God for my mentors. I thank God for the Air Force to help me along the way. Just having that inquisitive knowledge to kind of keep going. So that's how I ended up in the SOC, and then I'll pause there and we'll go forward from there.
So listen, if you guys got questions, don't hesitate to jump in and ask. I've got plenty of questions for Louis. We went over a couple of your questions. Some of them I cannot touch. There's like dead bodies associated with asking some of those questions. Louis, earlier on you mentioned that the SOC, you talked about the SOC's configuration and their intentional, unintentional. Company I represent now really focuses us on intentional versus unintentional, since we're a cloud company or a cloud security company. Which is the more dangerous, right? The intentional or the unintentional?
Which is more dangerous? Let me capture this part. Both are dangerous. I would categorize it this way. The most dangerous are the effects that result from personnel that have elevated accesses in the organization. In other words, they're trusted agents. They're you and I that have jobs that work within the company, name a company, IBM, whatever, name a company. But you've been trusted, you've been vetted, and you have privileges within the company. So you wear the company badge, the combinations to get in different areas. You can log into particular areas. So when you have that greater authority, those greater accesses, then the effects, you can produce more negative effects and detrimental effects. Now that's where I go into unintentional and intentional. So that person who has elevated privileges, whether they make a mistake being unintentional or whether they produce some effect intentional, they cause the greatest amount of damage. Because those that don't have privileged accesses, they don't even have the ability, the capacity to cause as much damage because they don't have access to those certain areas. So I would just change it a little bit to say those with elevated accesses need to be monitored more closely. Their activities need to be tracked more closely, right? There needs to be a sense of detectiveship around those people and those processes, because there's also background processes, computer to computer interactions where they're talking to each other that we don't get to see as humans, but we have to put other logical or technical controls in there to somehow limit the communication between the computers themselves. So that's how I would answer that. The most damage is going to come from those areas that have higher accesses within the organization. I think you're muted, Dave.
So first it's access, and then it narrows down to whether they're doing something intentional with the access or just unintentional. And in most systems, most SOC systems, I'm assuming, have like an early warning system. When you start touching stuff, like at our organization at Netscope, when you start touching stuff, then there are things that come from the operations center that say, "Hey, you shouldn't be here. Why are you here?" And then you start hearing these different conversations about why are you here, what are you doing, and then they start querying you about your access. If you had to have a concern about SOC operations capacity and capability, how would you rank? Because you already told us what the capabilities and the capacities and the capabilities are, but how would you rank SOCs in terms of their ability to actually save the corporate jewels, to protect the corporate jewels, if you would. How would you rate and rank that?
Okay. So the kind of the overall effectiveness of the SOC, it's going to start with your staffing. You've got to have the right folks with the right skills and the right knowledge and the right experience. So your staffing and skill, that's going to be, that is absolutely critical. And those folks, they need to be able to apply those skills to do what's really the bread and butter of a SOC, is to monitor, analyze, and then respond to whatever security threats or incidents occur, and to respond at the right tempo and with the right scope, and then understand how to triage, right? Just like in the physical world, you want to triage. How quickly can we stop the bleeding? Will a bandage be okay here, or do we need to apply a tourniquet? Who needs to know? And that's tough in today's environment, because there's such a fight for the limited amount of talent, right? Cybersecurity talent. So acquiring those skilled folks is really tough. So that's one of the things when I all the years I ran a SOC was always an issue, right? There was always just a lot of cannibalism amongst the other companies, because all the good people could move on. So that's a continual thing that you have to be concerned about when you build a very effective SOC. The technology and tools have to be updated, because the adversaries don't sleep very much, right? And they're always out there trying to figure out how to circumvent, right? They're also always trying to figure out how to take good ideas and good things and make them bad, or how to get in somehow so that they can steal your stuff. How do they get past your defenses? So you've got to always stay on top of that. And that requires a lot of times the financial investment. Again, that goes back to the skills of the folks too, to know exactly what's good, when do you need to change, why do you need to change, and how do you need to integrate that? So you have to have real-time visibility in the SOC. You can't afford to be behind the curve. And then when you've got the folks in the organization on the floor, one of the things that I always had to be concerned about was just alert fatigue, right? It's kind of like being a firefighter. When I talk to a lot of folks, I say, being in a SOC is similar in a lot of ways to being a firefighter. There's a lot of time when you're there, but nothing's really happening, right? There's no real fire. You may get some alarms, right? And you have to go out and you go to the mall or some building, you go and you do your search, and there's nothing there that you found. So there's a tendency to say, oh, here we go again, right? So you have to kind of keep your folks energized in terms of showing them how important this is, and then realizing we need you to be there when there really is a fight, when there really is a wreck, right? When there really is a 9/11, that's when I need the firefighters to be on point and to be ready. So you have to kind of manage that as well. And then there's that continuous monitoring. Again, that the adversary doesn't sleep. So this is not a 8 to 5 or 9 to 4 or whatever, in the SOC. It needs to be 24/7, because you've got to protect your company's assets 24/7. And really, the bad guys try and hit you at those times when they know you're least vigilant. Right. And that's the wee hours of the morning or over holidays and things like that. Right. So then there's a 24/7 requirement, and many folks don't want to work, through, mid shift and all that kind of thing. So you have to kind of deal with that too. Now there's ways to incentivize that and to get that done, but you need to understand if you're going to be a SOC manager that's something you need to be concerned with. And then if something happens, what do? You implement those playbooks. Who do you tell? You've got stakeholders that need to be notified. There may be press. There may be regulators depending on your organization, right? If you're in healthcare, if you're in transportation, if you're in banking, you have different regulators that need to know, and the different laws you have to comply with. So how do you do all that? That's a big deal as well. Not just finding what went wrong from a technical perspective, but making sure that you cover all the required communications too. And then stand on top of the threats, right? That's another one I always talk about. It's an ever-changing, and it's getting even worse now because of AI and ML. And when I mean worse for us as defenders, right, as cybersecurity folks, we're taking advantage of AI and ML as well, but so's the enemy. Just as we're advancing and doing great things with it, they're also doing wonderful things from their perspective, which is finding the holes or the gaps in our defenses easier or quicker, and then how do you circumvent those? So from a secure SOC perspective and a mature and effective SOC, those are the big ones that I've learned over the years and had to kind of shore up over the years, and then I get fired.
Louis, I got to tell you, you and I have had some really long and engaging conversations. Today, for some reason, you're really narrowing in and focusing in on some of the core requirements. And I know we've got like about 13, 14 questions that we're going to go through. We probably won't get through them. Here's what's interesting is that every time you're going through your statements, I start taking notes, and the notes are bringing up more questions, especially from the perspective of, as I really want to get into the human capital element, because that's a first of all, there's this somewhat of a negative trope about working all of these tough long hours and this aggressive, maybe sometimes mundane, but aggressive and mundane. It's one day it's feast and famine, or one day it's hailing with brimstone, and next day it's absolutely nothing. And then keeping your folks incentivized and vigilant, to run a security operation. But before I get into the people, how much is too much here, right? Because you got to invest. You have to invest. And I did have a question down the road about AI that we put in here and how it affects the SOC. But how much is too much here when it comes to personnel, human capital, money investment, technological tool acquisition? What's over the top for, let's just not even for, just get it, because you're now talking to a lot of other organizations as part of the architecture team. What's over the top for some of these organizations? What's too much?
Okay. Typically, that question gets answered for us because it boils down and points to the budget. From my perspective, I always pushed, to the limit. Always push to, keep the most updated and industry leading tool sets, right, as part of our SOC. Get the most highly trained personnel, making sure that I was always increasing my security baseline, both from a technical perspective and a people perspective, right? Getting smarter and smarter as the adversary is getting smarter and smarter. So the things and the techniques and the processes that were good 5 years ago are, they're obsolete now. So yes, there is definitely a real, situation where you're over the top, where too much is too much, but typically that's identified for you because the CFO, has said, hey, are you, because you go in with your plan, you've got your case, your here's why we need this, and here's how I can better protect the assets, and you're competing with the other parts of the organization. Right? Everybody has a good reason that they're in with the CEO and the CFO, and they're pitching. But the kind of one of the challenges you have in the SOC and IT in general is because IT doesn't typically bring money into the company. It protects the assets, but you're not, unless you are an IT or cybersecurity company where you're selling IT products and services. If you're banking, then that's a cost center. Then IT and cybersecurity is a cost center for you. So when I'm standing, when it's my turn in front of the CEO and I'm pitching a budget, he or she is looking at, well, what's in it for me? How is this improving my return on investment? It's much easier to say that when the marketing person is there and they're saying, hey, if you give us this budget for this advertising during the Super Bowl, making that up, we're gonna increase. It's historically that we're gonna increase sales by XYZ, right? So that question typically gets answered for you. But what I've learned, the best way is to keep pushing, to keep trying to do the best, and always tie what you're requesting to what other folks are doing too. In other words, you want to say, hey, company X was in the news the other day because of some breach, and they were breached because they didn't do this. We don't want to be the next one, right? And the lawyers typically, their ears perk up and they say,
Right.
okay, right. So although I can't say I'm directly increasing revenues, but I'm protecting a loss of revenues and a loss of market share and a loss of reputation, right? And I'm protecting us from fines from the regulators, right? So that's kind of how I've learned over the years and been successful to keep pushing until the CFO just says this, it hurts too much now.
Yeah, it hurts too much. This is an interesting conversation. I know we've got some questions, and I think my next question is going to be helping to answer some of the questions that some of the folks have in it. And we were talking about also, Louis, what we understand is to be the skills that are necessary to be a SOC analyst and to develop, a level of expertise. I wanted, there's like 5 or 6 of them, but I wanted to ask you to give us a blurb on each one of them. The first one is technical skills. What's required for technical skills? I'm going to go down a list, but I'm starting with technical skills. Okay.
So technical, you really need to understand emerging technologies, right? There's a core bag, a core level of capabilities that you have to have. You got to understand network protocols. You need to understand scripting. You need to understand different operating systems, right? Linux being or Nix. We in the industry we call them Nix, right? Little asterisk in Nix, because they're Unix based, but they could be Linux. And there's different what's called distributions, rather be Kali or CentOS or any of the different flavors. There's so many of them, but they're all based on a particular flavor of operating system. That's pretty critical. And then networking protocols in one way to think of it is just the language that computers use to communicate and the rule sets that they use to communicate with each other. And there's many, like when you send an email, the protocol or the language between a client and a server is a specific kind of protocol. If you're doing like a remote desktop protocol, if you use an RDP remote desktop protocol, logging into a different computer remotely, right? Like help desk do a lot. That's a particular language, right? Those are all protocols, and there's a whole bunch of them. So you kind of have to understand those. Encryption is huge. We see it a lot in websites, right? When we know SSL, right? Secure Socket Layer, or if you're familiar with that protocol, Hyper Text Transfer Protocol, Secure HTTPS. That's the one where you have a little lock on your web browser URL and it says it's secure when you're talking to the banking. Well, that lives based on encryption. Encryption is used a lot of other ways in protecting assets, data at rest, right? BitLocker, those kinds of things are all encryption, right? Even your passwords or your passphrases, you're encrypting those, especially when you send them across the network. Fundamental, got to understand threat intelligence, access controls, vulnerability management, and assessment, those kinds of things. So from a technical perspective, you've got to have those chops. But the beauty of it is you can learn that in the SOC because it's tiered. You've got your entry level where you get to work on those. And then as you progress and you build out your trade craft, you can move up to the next layer and the next layer and the next layer. So you don't have to walk in knowing that stuff, all of it. Nobody does. You grow. But from a technical perspective, a blurb, that those are the kind of things that you really need to be very successful in.
And just getting in and getting your hands dirty gives you the capability and the ability. And then you can add certification to that, because once you know what the heck it is you're doing, right, you add certification to it, then that makes you invaluable. The next thing I wanted to ask you about is communication skills. What do you need to have as communication skills to be in a SOC environment? Yeah. What do you think about communication
Okay,
skills?
okay. In day to day, that's very important because the SOC is divided into different cells. You'll have typically, there's different ways you can construct a SOC, but you have a networking section, you have an application section, you have vulnerability management section, right? But if something happens in terms of an incident, the different sections need to be able to communicate with each other in a way that the other sections understand. So there's a big collaboration piece. Most SOCs have some type of collaboration tool where all these different sections talk together and they say, well, what are you seeing? I'm seeing this. Okay, this is coming your way. Or I've done this. I've taken this part of it, right? I've analyzed this particular protocol or this, it is coming from this port. So communication is very important from translating into a common language, a SOC language, and written. And one of the most important skills of a SOC is recording because things are happening so quickly and being very specific. You have to put that the IP address and the protocol in the socket, right? Just throwing that terminology, not trying to teach us that if we're not familiar with it, but those things are very important in doing our detective work because that's what we are, right? Big detectives when we're trying to figure out what happened because we're responding to an incident, something's already happened. Just like in a real physical world, we're at the crime scene, the fire is there. I won't get too graphic, but whatever the situation is, now we're a whodunit. How do we figure that out? We're doing that in a digital world. So that's hugely important as well. You don't function in a SOC. I gotta say it. You will not function in a SOC unless you have good communicative skills. Okay.
Right, and nobody's operating in a silo.
Nobody's operating in a silo.
What about problem solving skills?
Problem solving, right? That's going to deal, directly with your analytical skills because you're going to have things go wrong, right? You mentioned earlier, the lights are going to come on, the alerts are going to happen, the phone's going to ring. Like, what happened? I used to be able to do this, and now I can't do this. Okay, we have a problem. So you've got to be able to take what's real, figure out what happened. And like a puzzle, kind of put the pieces together, and also go out. It's like a lot of gamers, right? When I interview folks for the SOC, one of the kind of hobbies or things I look for is somebody a gamer. If they're a gamer, then a lot of times they have those skills already, right? Because they're looking for clues. They're used to going through the game and try and take little hints. Right, little clues, and put all that together to figure out, well, what went wrong, and then once you figure out what went wrong, it gives you a better idea of how to correct it, and that's what the SOC is all about: remediating, getting us back to the last well-known state, getting us back to a condition where the company is now able to continue generating revenues.
Right. Last normal state, getting us back to that point, and then we can continue on. But of course, making sure that when we get back there, we've done some postmortem on everything that just happened.
That's right.
Because it's going to happen again.
That's right.
If we don't seal up and shore up those things.
That's
right. The last thing I wanted to ask you about is before I go to the audience, and there's two questions in the audience with the ability to work under pressure.
Oh,
there's a ton of false positives, man. The false positives are coming all the time. Every day you're going to have false positives, and then you're going after this one thing, and when you finally get it, you grabbed it, you've identified it, you've cataloged it. Is nothing, or it was so small, right? It's so small that it's just the beginning of the problem. You want to give them a little bit more time to identify themselves clearly, so you know what to do with them. So, What about that whole idea of working under pressure and keeping them sharp and ready, right? Keeping them sharp and ready so they don't become a dull night. I'm sorry to.
What I always did was kind of help my teams understand you're not alone. You don't have to solve, you don't have to save the world alone. You're part of a team, and you've got a massive team here, right? And what you will find, or after doing this for a while, most of that pressure is internally generated. It's internal because what's happened is already happened, right? It's an incident. It's past tense now. It's already happened. So I spend a lot of time helping my staff understand that you have a particular portion to play, but it's not a fail or succeed report card based on only what you do. So just focus on what you've been trained, do your part, and we're going to get to the end of this, right? We're going to figure out what's going on. We're going to identify the scope of it. We're going to manage it. We're going to triage properly, and we're going to get back to an operating state that is producing, because the whole reason we exist is to protect the business assets and the business processes. We're going to get to that point, and we're going to do some root cause analysis and figure it out. But the key thing is we. So yes, is there a lot of pressure? Absolutely, it is. But it can quickly get out of control if a person or one team, because we've got several teams. If that team thinks it resides all on them, and it doesn't. So that's where that communication comes into play as well, and sharing the information and saying, okay, here's how collectively we get to that point. And if we manage that, then we have a good chance of preventing the burnout, right? Because the biggest part of the burnout comes from people, having these periods of calm, and then these long periods of just chaos. And oh my God, and if I don't get this right, I'm going to lose my job. Those kinds of things. Those are real concerns to folks. So we have to make them understand that you're part of a team. We've done this before. We've got a lot of muscle within the organization to get this done. Kind of focus on your area and contribute the way you've been trained to contribute, and we're all going to be okay.
Got you. Jason, I know you have a question. Jason, would you like to come on screen and ask your question? Hey, Jason, you got a full beard. When did that happen?
I know.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Hi, Jason. How are you?
How you doing, Dr. Pate? I'm doing well. Yeah, so my question is, what communication skills are necessary to be an exceptional leader?
Communication skills.
You had the Air Force in there. You threw the Air Force in there too, Jason.
Yeah.
And why'd you throw the Air Force in there, Jason? Full disclosure.
I think
I know why you have the Air Force in there, but give it to Dr. Pate.
So I recently took an interest in the Air Force civilian service.
Oh, okay.
And one of the perks that it came with was that they would be paying for schooling, and so they developed a training course that I would go through in my second year. And so this is based off of some of the things that I would be going into. So I just wanted to kind of pick your brain about, what are things that I should keep in mind as I go through this program.
Okay. And I spent some time in Air Force civilian service too. I spent about 6 years after I retired. So I think I have a little bit of accuracy to add to it. To me, the biggest thing that I employed and I saw and I learned from my mentors is being able to communicate to people at their level. So communication skills, right? It's only effective if the receiver accurately receives what you're trying to transmit. So people are motivated by different things. Some people are motivated by public accolades. Some people are motivated by financial incentives. Some people are motivated by promotions. Understanding what motivates those folks requires getting to know them to a bit. If you're going to be the leader, you got to kind of find out where they live. And a lot of times I was able to do that. I know it's a little more difficult now with this online world, but I would do LBWA, right, which is leadership by walking around. When people understand that you care about things that they care about, that's usually the greatest form of communication. And not just being able to communicate tasks, which is good, right? You've got to be able to do that too as a leader. You've got to be able to clearly and succinctly communicate, this is what the expectation is, these are what the tasks, this is what the rewards are, these are what the punishments. Yes, But before you get to all that effectively, one of the keys, or I think the biggest key, is understanding those individuals as individuals and then tailoring your communication to a way that resonates with them. A little bit of that comes with experience, but if you have it in the back of your mind, it'll help you to kind of march towards that. So I think that takes you to that level of being exceptional. And every general officer, every politician, every senior leader that has ever been willing to mentor me has also shared that same kind of, different words, but the same underlying: communicate with your people where they are, and they're going to be more willing to make sure that they take care of you as well. So does that help, Jason? Hopefully.
Yes, sir. And I guess a follow-up question to that
Sure.
would be, what is a communication roadblock? If there is any.
Many of them. The biggest one is not understanding the individual, but a lot of times it's family, right? A lot of times it's personal, health issues. A lot of times it's a combination of past hurts. I feel like I wasn't treated properly by the previous, manager. Or here we go again. The company doesn't care. They say this, but they don't. They don't actually, they aren't committed, right? So broken promises. So just as you as a leader expect that when you send an email for a task or you ask something, you expect a response back, pretty quickly. Hold yourself accountable that when your folks ask something from you, you get it back to them quickly as well, because that's important to them. Whether it's signing a time card, whether it's approving their vacation, whatever it is, when they're asking, have that same sense of urgency to get back to them, because they'll quickly realize that, okay, this guy doesn't care. Those are huge roadblocks.
Great point.
There are others, right? But those are the ones that'll sink.
All right. And of course, communication in an environment like the Air Force, similar to an environment like any corporate engagement, communication is understanding. I think you said it earlier, listening, being able to listen, have effective listening, not listening just so you can get a chance to talk, but
Right.
listening so you can get real clarity about what it is that person has just said to you. You have to be a great interpreter. So Jason, if you don't have another question, I wanted to move on to LJ, who had a question. LJ, would you like to come on and ask your question, sir? Or ma'am? I don't want to be silly about that one. If you don't come on, LJ, I'm going to go ahead and read your question and ask it, okay? Silence is acceptance, right?
LJ says, I can't talk, only type right now.
No doubt. That's great. Thank you, LJ. So LJ has asked, have you any advice on getting into cloud security? LJ is currently a platform engineer for a bank, but wants to get into a more security focused role.
Cloud security. The path, actually, LJ, the path that I took to upgrade my skills first started with more of a vendor agnostic. I would recommend that you start learning vendor agnostic first, right? When you're going into cloud, don't immediately jump into Azure or AWS or GCP, Google Cloud, right? Or any of those.
But do focus on Netscope.
But of course, that's the exception, right? So you want to go more initially, you want to go more generic, right? So look for a certification that gives you the basic cloud fundamentals, right? And the pillars. And then depending on what your organization is married to, right? Or the organization that you're targeting, then you want to go towards that particular vendor. So if your organization is an AWS cloud organization, then you want to start going into AWS security, right? The architect one, security architect is a really, really good one. So that's the one I would recommend if you're going in AWS. If your particular company is Microsoft, is Azure, then you want to go into the Azure security. So make sure you marry what you're going to have an opportunity to interact with on a daily basis, right, with your company. And that's the one you go after. But get the basic knowledge first, and then the security pieces, right, will start to come in. But you've got to understand basic cloud service providers and how they're architected, how they're constructed, why you would go a certain way in terms of architecture, engineering. And then based on that, you can start building on the security pieces of that. And I'd be glad to help you with some of that. If you want to hit me up on LinkedIn, that's kind of what I do. I love doing that. So hit me up and I'll give you more details. But overall, that's my recommendation of getting into that space.
You guys, and you can see that Dr. Pate's LinkedIn is in the chat, so you can go there and download his LinkedIn and connect with him. Dio, looks like you have got a question. You tell Dio, tell Dr. Pate where you're from.
Yes. My mind is evening right now. I don't know what time it is that site, but
Dedication. Thank you, sir.
I am from Uganda, Africa. Yeah.
Right now.
Okay.
Right now.
I know. Wow. Wow. My wife's from Rwanda, so your neighbor.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. You probably speak the same one, at least one of the same languages. So, but anyway, we'll do that later. We'll have that talk later.
So, my first question is,
yes.
Do you feel like social engineering would be like a high severity kind of problem for an organization, like basing on your experience? Is it something which is really critical most of the times?
Yes, and yes. The top two vectors for that criminals use craft come through emails and websites, right? Phishing emails and websites that are crafted in such a way that you think you're going to a particular location, but you're actually going to the website of the cyber criminal. And both of those are subsets of social engineering, right? Because they are typically using something you're familiar with. Either is coming from an email from you see this email from David Elcock, right? It's not really from him, but it says it's coming from him, and you're like, if you're not thinking or not looking to see or expect, you're more likely to click on that email or some website that's similar, right? Bank of America. But instead of using the old that's in English, it uses an old that's, I don't know, Cyrillic or something. These are real things that the criminals use. So when you look at they look the same, it's a different language. But you click on it because you think it's a message from Bank of America, and it's really just that one change is sending you to their website. Again, social engineering. They notice behavior that you have. And why are those two the most vulnerable? Because by design, those two methodologies and technologies depend on vast access, right? If you have a website, your idea is you want people to come to it, right? So you're trying to encourage the most. In emails, you're trying to encourage. So the more you open yourself up and invite in, the more opportunity that the higher percentage of bad guys are coming in. So yes, not only is that probable, that's historically, since I've been in the industry, those are the two greatest attack vectors, and they both rely on and depend upon and a subset of social engineering.
Yeah, thank you. Concerning that, I wanted to add another question, which is, You talked about when it comes to buying in terms of like the citizen CFO giving money for like this program. Is fear like the best tactic when it comes to that?
Fear is a very effective tactic. I use it every chance I get.
Oh my God.
But you have to back it up with facts. It's the fear of understanding what's happening in the climate, and you coming in with your case studies where you say, hey, this is what happened to Walmart. This is what happened to General Motors, right? And this happened to them because of this. And by the way, in our organization, we're vulnerable to that. So we're on a glide slope to be the next one in the news. And this is what it cost them. This was a $7 million hit to Walmart, or this was a, whatever the numbers are. So who does that resonate with? It resonates with the lawyers for one, because, they're in the business of preventing those type of hits within the organization. And they want to ensure, compliance and regulatory and governance that's protected. The company's doing a great job there. And then the CFO also, because when you tell the CFO, number one, a big multinational company like Walmart was hit, and in the millions, he or she is going to automatically see and understand what the impact to your company's bottom line. So absolutely, I use it. But if you use it right, you have to be able to defend it, because if they find if there's any crack in that, you're going to lose credibility, and you don't want to be in that situation. So grab your case studies, make sure you've gotten all the information and it's valid, and you're not just going 1 or 2 levels deep, but you want to go and try and find the most accurate information and the root cause of what happened. So you want to go mostly to the governmental agencies that are reporting, so you can be factual. But yes, absolutely use it. That's one of the things that will help you. It's not the only tactic, but it's one that you want to use. The other one is just to protect. You want to show that the cost of inaction is much more detrimental than the cost of action.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And when you use fear,
That help?
I'm sorry, I was interrupting you, Doctor.
No, I was finished. Go ahead.
And I was saying to Dio, when you use fear, you got to have a business case associated with that fear. I mean, the business case is going to be really laid out, the exact processes, and maybe even like Dr. Pate said, the case study of what happens. That takes me. Thank you for the question, Dio, because it takes me back to that conversation we were having about what is, how much is too much. We've got maybe about 10 minutes or less. And you mentioned that, it gets to the point where financially it's prohibitive or it hurts too much. And because our technology solution or our security plan is a cost center. Now, me being on the customer facing side right, of the business, I'm always saying, well, yeah, it is a cost center, but here's how we plug our cost center into our profitability model, by simply saying to the customer that we're dealing with, well, here's why it costs this much, and here's why it's more effective, and here's why we're spending the money to protect you, and here's why, and here's why, and here's why. Should your solution or your cost center approach, shouldn't that be part of your marketing effort? This is what we've done to secure the environment so that you can continue to conduct business as you were. Had we not put these tools or these processes in place, they'd be hitting our attack surface on a regular basis. But this is what we did to protect our organization and our downline and our supply chain. That's why this is a good investment in money. And that's why you, Mr. Customer, should be paying us to do what we do. Does that resonate with you as well, Louis?
Yeah, it does. And that wins sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't.
Even though he was nodding the whole time, right? See?
Yeah. No, I mean, because I'm looking at the experience, right? And sometimes you can go in with the best cases, right? But and this is reality check we're talking here, right? But what happens is the senior leadership in the company decides to establish the risk tolerance, right? The risk level.
There you go.
So you may come in with this, and I've done it many a times. Here is what we really need to do to reduce the amount of concurrent connections that are hitting this firewall. This firewall, I recommend we replace it because we had an acquisition with another company. We brought in 20% more folks than we had previously. The original firewall was sized to support the previous organizational size. Now it's under siege, and we need to upgrade because of this. And this is the amount of money it's going to cost. And if you don't do that, then there's an associated risk of losing control from an authentication perspective. The firewall won't be able to keep up, and there's some risk of maybe having a loss of availability, because there'll be some downtime, right? But the leaders of the organization always have the final say so to go, okay, thank you very much, but I'm willing to take that risk. They are the only ones that can say that. So I have to come in, and anyone in that, that kind of cybersecurity space, you come in, just as David has said, this is why you want to do this. Because you want to be and you want to exist in the most secure environment possible.
Right.
And hopefully they'll accept that. But they base that on their risk management, risk analysis as well, and all that's been laid out up front. What's my tolerance level, right? How bad am I going to get hit? And we all know those cases, like a lot of times I teach. Yeah. Or well, I don't know if I use this with a lot of young folks, but these young folks may not remember the Pinto case, right? All of us great beards remember that.
That's right.
Right? It's like, hey, I get it. The risk is that we're going to have these millions of dollars in losses because when somebody hits this car from the back, it explodes in life. But we've done the calculations, and we're making more money on selling these cars than it would cost us to re-engineer, right? A sad situation, but what happens, and organizations get to do that. So yes, you bring in those. These are wise, but but realizing and understanding and being and accepting the fact that from our perspective, we have to appreciate what the risk profile is and the risk appetite is of the leadership. And sometimes they may say it's great, it's good, but I'm going to pass on it this time.
Absolutely, especially since they've already calculated the loss.
That's right.
For each item that leaves that assembly line, factory, or what have you, they've already calculated the loss and built it into the profitability of the product itself. So I'm going to go around the room. Dio, Carlos, Chad, Derek, Hayden, Jason, Kelvin, LJ, LaRon, and Lorenzo. You guys got any questions? Because I'm going to be closing out, but I just wanted to see if anyone had a question for Dr. Pate. You can see he's an affable brother. He's really a great brother. Trust me on this. Trust me, he's a great brother. We've, so we've met and we've had some great conversations. We've, come to got to know each other quite well. And like most of the people that come to this interview stage, he's got an impeccable background. He's got an impeccable background, and he looks like us, and that's what we're looking for, to see how we are. Because don't be deceived. This is not like a cattle call. Everybody move to Atlanta. It's not like that. It's not like that. Not everybody's going to get in, but what you want to do is be prepared to be part of that competitive process to compete to win. Last question, Dr. Pate. What does it take? What 3 skills? What does it take for somebody entry level to get into the SOC, or to chase you down and trip you and get a job with you?
the first thing I look for when I interview folks is a willingness to learn. That's the number one thing, a willingness to learn. I've had so many people come in and say, you know, I don't have it all, but I'll figure it out. Give me a chance. 100% of the time, I've hired those people, and 100% of the time, they've not let me down. They've exceeded, right? So just that number one, that willingness to learn. The other thing I look for is what are you doing? Are there things that you're doing as hobbies? If you tell me you're a gamer, if you tell me you're, you know, like oh, I love to play chess or debate, you know, there's some skills, right? And some things that you do for fun that I look to learn, because I know that those are really beneficial in the SOC environment where you've got to take tons of information and sift through it quickly and make connections that don't appear there to be there. And then the next thing that I really do look for folks that have had some sort of adversity in their lives, that they've had to pull themselves up to a degree by their bootstrings, because they're more likely to be more comfortable being uncomfortable. And a lot of times in the SOC work, you have your skills, but there are many times you're in a gray area because something's happened. You don't know exactly what the cause is, and the bells are going off, the alarms are going off, and you're trying to figure it out. So you're not able to be very, very comfortable, but you have to be somewhat comfortable in uncomfortable situations. So always do a technical interview, right? You have to understand, you know, if I ask you what protocol 25 is, you know, you need to be able to tell me, at least that, or port 80, something like that, right? Some simple things that give me the idea you've got the core. But I'm more looking at, are you willing, and are you going to be in it for a while because you're used to being in situations that aren't perfect every single time, and then some of the other things that you're doing give you a holistic, I guess, approach to how you would carry out SOC work. So those three big ones, right? Technical is not it by itself. I've hired folks that are less technically sound, but I can see those other things in the play, and I've hired them over folks who are really technical, but they're they're siloed, and they're not gonna work very well. So
there you go, Dr. Pate. It's been really, Doc. Question. 3 minutes. 3 minutes left, Doc.
I'll take less than 3 minutes. How you doing? Dr. Pate, thank you for coming on and talking to us today. Very meaningful conversation. I'm glad I got my Air Force career in there 30+2 with you.
woohoo!
Yes, thanks for coming on. You know, we aim high all the time.
That's right. That's right.
But I want to piggyback on something you said for Jason Quick. Jason, I just want to add these for you. When you're dealing with the Air Force, and I'm sure Dr. Pate is going to resonate with this, take all the classes, the leadership classes you can get. Find good mentors. Find good mentors and use your experiences, as he's already use your experiences coming up and going through that, because what you're going to find, as he reiterated before, I'm just putting it a different way, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's for you when you're dealing with your staff.
I like that.
Technologically, just keep, this is for everyone, stay on the leading edge of emerging technologies and brush up on your relationship and communication skills. Dr. Pate, I really appreciate you coming on. You rang all my bells today, man, and I was shaking my head because that's my 2 minutes. I said I'd do it in less than 3. I'm done. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Appreciate those words, and thanks for adding that too. I really appreciate it. I hope you all, were we're blessed by this conversation. You learn something, and like David always says, this is not the end of it. You know, it's all about us networking and taking care of each other. And everybody on this call has a lot to share. So let's continue to network.
I appreciate that last statement about being blessed, because most of us, you and I, and anyone else who's here, are believers, right? And so we believe that that there's a higher power, and that higher power really governs who we are and what our lives. And so we're dedicated to that as well. Listen, guys, man. Again, Dr. Pate, wow, man. Thanks very much for coming and blessing us and gracing us and educating us. You know, you got to come back. I keep saying this to you. And if you look at the rest of the year, you got to come back and interview one of these folks, right? You got Daniel Conroy, right? You know Daniel Conroy, right? You got him coming up. You got next month, you've got the CISO from Netscope coming up. You got the chief operations officer, the chief operating officer from Bank of New York coming up. So there's some powerful people coming up that we've scheduled to interview. You might want to come back and interview one of them.
You see how Dave's put me on? You see how he's put me on the spot, y'all? That's how those New Yorkers do you, man. They just hit you. Yeah.
But I love you, brother, and you've been an inspiration and a definite support to me. It helps me, but it also helps you, just from the perspective that it's putting all of us in a crosshairs of these power brokers and impact people, so they could see not just me, but they could see you, see our network, our ecosystem, and who we are, right? It's not just, you're right, it's not just about us. Listen, fellas and ladies and gentlemen, thanks for coming. Really appreciate you guys for all being here. Ron, hope to see you next month. LJ, hope to see you next month as well. I really appreciate you guys coming, and we'll all look together to be together next month. Let me just put my LinkedIn in. Let me put my LinkedIn in the chat so that you guys can touch me as well. I have nerve not putting my LinkedIn in the chat, just right. So give me 2 seconds there. I'm an old man, but not that old. There it is. Hey, look, let's communicate. Let's continue to connect. Thanks everybody for coming. Until next month. Let's continue. Dio, man.
Thanks, Doc.
Always good to see you, Dio.
Yeah, thanks everybody. I really had fun. Thank y'all. Take care, everybody. Yeah. Okay, bye-bye.